Hey, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I have a question to ask you. Well, more like a comment, a little bit about your instructor here. My name is now. I obviously it's been weeks since we started this class, so it isn't like you don't know my name, Jason Myers. But something strange about my name that there's a couple famous characters in film lore that share my first and last name. Of course, Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers, two of the most infamous characters in all of late 70s and 80s cinema, slasher cinema. So, as you can imagine, one of my favorite holidays for this reason is Halloween. Now, one of the reasons why your instructor loves Halloween so much is that you can be and pretend to be anyone that you please. Okay? Now, as I'm trying to jostle this, and you know what? I am just going to restart this as we speak. I'm just restarting my VMware. Anyways, why I love Halloween is that because you can be anything or anyone that you want to be. So that's what we're basically going to be demonstrating in today's lab. We're going to be I'm going to be showing you how you can masquerade, if you will, as somebody else. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, as you can see that I am, logging into my VMware. The first thing is I want to talk to everyone, about the idea of just review with everyone about the idea of what a MAC address is. Now, we recall from past lectures, and let me bring up the idea of the Ethernet address. And I know I've talked about it, and so the Ethernet address is what identifies a host locally, as opposed to you going to Google or you going to Facebook or Alibaba or Instagram. Like, for example, if you're in a Wi-Fi environment and you're on your cell phone or on your laptop, going to Instagram, going to Amazon.com. So that's a different situation. You're going from inside of your house to a remote asset. So I'm not talking about that. When you are in your own house, if you are staring at a camera or printer or even another host, so if you're host A and you're looking at another host or the camera for your facility or your local printer, meaning everyone on the same subnet, this is how hosts communicate. Now, TCP/IP, like I said, it's kind of like a hash map in which you're going to need to fill out all the fields in order for the protocol to occur. So, in other words, in order for IP to occur, I know that's UDP, but even so, even for a ping, which is ICMP, or any of a trace route, which is also ICMP, or ARP, also ICMP. It doesn't matter. You need both the MAC address and the IP address for any protocol in TCP/IP to proceed, to go forward, to be processed, if you will. So you need both IP and the MAC address, but the IP address, you could say, is almost or a formality, okay? Because it's kind of like pizza. I once, I was very young. I was probably, 10, maybe I was 12 or 13 or 14. But I remember my mother, asked me to order a pizza, and I forgot the pepperoni. And I just presumed pizza always came with pepperoni, but we found out that, hey, I forgot you have to tell the pizza place you want pepperoni. Some people are like, hey, Pizza is cheese and pepperoni and the crust. I mean, what else is pizza? However, to some people, pizza is just the bread and the cheese. You will have to say pepperoni. Um, so some people, the pepperoni is a formality. We presume it's going to come. So with when you're ordering a pizza, as I said, you shouldn't have to say I'd like cheese with the pizza because, of course, even if you just say I don't want anything on the pizza, I just want pizza, you're at least going to get cheese and sauce. So that is understood, okay? That is taken for granted. In the same way that in a LAN segment, we're presuming already that the IPs are in our current subnet. So, for example, in the subnet of 192.168.1.0/24, which means it's a default Class C IP address. The IP subnet stretches from 192.168.192.1 all the way to 192.168.1.254. Okay, so if you did 255, that would represent the broadcast address. So similarly, if we bring up my Kali right here, and I did sudo ifconfig, it's going to ask me for my password because we mentioned sudo. We did sudo. I think even in Kali, ifconfig okay, well, on some, yeah, just so everyone knows, on some distributions of Linux, you can't just run ifconfig. You have to do sudo ifconfig. And apparently Kali isn't one of them. I know on Debian, Debian does require you, I believe, to prefix prefix the ifconfig command with sudo. Anyways, so we have ifconfig, and we can see that in this case, the private IP address of Kali of this VMware is 192.168.1.218 and this is the subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. That's the /24 that I was talking about. And then, of course, the broadcast is, let me move this over. And actually, let me do this again to get everything on one line. We see that the broadcast of of 192.168.1.255 is in fact 192.168.1.255. What this means, you can see, as you can see, the computer is able to automatically configure or figure out the broadcast address of this host address on the fly, and that is the danger of malware. Certain types of malware, because malware tends to want to propagate on all your current subnet. So malware is also able to calculate based on your subnet mask what the broadcast address is, and if it indeed sends a request to the broadcast, it's going to send that request to everyone on your local area network. Now, that being said, that's what an Ethernet address does. It is going to that is how host A is able to identify the camera. So, for example, I have security cameras in my home. Many businesses have security cameras, attached to them, and usually it is a situation where the ring is you're still, even though, for example, let me grab my phone. My phone's over here. 1 second. Let me go this way. I'm just grabbing my phone. Okay. So I have my phone here. So on my phone, I don't know if you can see, I can go to my ring. See, this is reverse. So this is the ring, my ring app right here. And 1 second. Here you can actually see my security camera. It's relatively early in the morning. That's why the camera is so messed up. And there's my buddy telling me all around what he cooked for his wife last night, and anyways, sorry for that momentary freeze. But as you can see in my security camera, uh, it's accessing these cameras. But even though I'm in the local area network, it's using the Ring's network remote services to for me to reference those cameras. So even though I am viewing them in my local area network, I am I'm still referencing it remotely. So it would reference the Ring by its WAN IP address. Okay, that's not the situation here. The situation here is that the host address, this host A, if he wants to view his camera because the camera is on his local area network, he is referencing it by MAC address. So the host A would say, "Here is my identifying information. I'm going to be accessing the camera, and I'm using not the IP address of the camera. I'm using the MAC address of the camera." So that is the importance of MAC addresses in in uh, in the way we talk about them. So the way we are referencing layer 2 MAC addresses is we're using them as Ethernet identifiers. So you need to identify yourself to do anything, to even reference somebody, to even go to Google, you have to identify yourself by IP. Now, when we think of identifying ourselves, we actually naturally think of IP addresses. But on a layer 2 environment, okay, the only thing that the source and destination see are our Ethernet addresses. Now, the Ethernet address, I know we throw around things like MAC addresses, Ethernet addresses, burned in addresses, layer 2 addresses. I mean, the labels boggle the mind, okay? And we're just literally touching the surface. Okay, so what the heck is it? What are all these labels? So when we talk about layer 2 addressing, what we're referring to is the physical address, and we're not really pointing to the specifics of Ethernet. But Ethernet is a layer 2 protocol. Similarly, PPP or point to point protocol is another type of layer 2 protocol. But point to point protocol would be between two serial links, okay? And usually point to point protocol and other layer 2 protocols such as HDLC and on other layer 2 protocols such as X5 and frame relay, okay, those are all WAN type layer 2 protocols, okay, on the LAN. Those are, now when I say LAN style protocols, um, you would connect. Well, when I say LAN, I mean um, I'm trying to think. How should I say this? WAN style protocol. So in other words, you would take two routers, and if you position them so that they're directly connecting to each other, you would probably not use Ethernet. You would use something cheaper, such as frame relay, HDLC, and point to point protocol. The reason why it's cheaper because you're connecting them via serially. So you would connect two previously discontiguous or disconnected environments or LANs. Now within the LAN itself, the number one layer 2 technology is in a LAN environment. Can you guess? Well, hopefully you guessed right. The number one layer 2 technology in a LAN, not WAN, in a LAN environment is Ethernet. Okay? So when we talk about what an Ethernet address is, an Ethernet address essentially is the MAC address that is provided to us by the internal circuitry of the host itself, which is why an layer 2 Ethernet address locally is sometimes referred to as the burned in address, because the layer 2 Ethernet address is based on the circuitry board burnt in address. So if we go to our virtual environment right here that I'm accessing via VMware, I'm using Kali. If we take a look at our ifconfig etho, we can see that the Ethernet address that is, for this installation is this 000C29361F88. Now, what this represents is this Ethernet address or MAC address given to us by the layer 2 of either the OSI or TCP/IP model. Sorry, we always have to mention that. It's given to us by the layer 2, all right, and it is divvied up into two. I was going to say three. It is divvied up into two parts. And it's 48-bit in all, and it's represented as a hexadecimal number. So I'm going to say the first half, which would be 000C29, that is what we call the OUI, okay, or unique identifier, okay. And this part represents like the ID of the host itself, okay. And sorry, having issues with my PowerPoint. For example, this MAC address, it starts, the first half is this right here, and let me see if I can underline it, and I don't know why I'm having issues with how I'm highlighting this. I'll just highlight the first half in yellow. So the yellow represents what they call the OUI, which identifies the vendor or manufacturer. Okay, and this next part, and I'll make this into orange, I guess. This part identifies is device specific. Now, the reason why it's divvied up into two parts is because supposedly there are no two MAC addresses that are the same, which is why a MAC address could be linked to, like, for example, a driver's license or your social security number or your student identification number here at your university. And yes, I know we've already gone through this, and a couple weeks ago we were talking about MAC addresses, but I'm just leading into this next material with the fact that you could pretend to be somebody else, and the MAC address is akin to identity, like adjusting or spoofing. Well, I don't want to use the term spoofing because MAC address spoofing is something slightly different. MAC address spoofing is kind of like the man-in-the-middle attack. Spoofing is usually done by somebody else. So somebody else is the one pretending to be somebody else. So if you change your MAC address, you are almost like, if you've ever seen a movie about, what about the Edgar Allan Poe book, The Mask of the Red Death? Okay, how many of you have ever read the Edgar Allan Poe's The Mask of the Red Death? Now, that is about a virus that's taken over the world, and the only place that you have, that you're safe seemingly from this virus is on this island or in this little castle, and they're not even sure that they're safe from the virus there. And they're throwing a very decadent ball, and it's a masquerade, and they're pretending to be all these other people. And part of the reason why they're trying to pretend to be these other people is they're trying to fool the virus, pretending that, hey, there's somebody else, so the virus should just skip them. And the idea is that avarice, jealousy, and all the negative things that are out there, you can be the most jealous. You could be the most the biggest thief that there is, the worst type of person. Life is still going to get you. So not only was The Mask of the Red Death a great book, it was also a great movie as well. And you can see the visualization of the book in the movie, obviously. And, color, it takes a lot of, it takes a high priority, the notion of color, because in the movie there's a red room, there's a blue room, there's a yellow room. And the idea is it doesn't matter where you go. Life, whether it's a virus or whether it's taxes or whether it's other people's bad personalities, they're going to infect you. You're going to be part of life no matter what. And it's kind of like that. So like that's why I mentioned Halloween. We can pretend to be somebody that we're not, and by changing your MAC address, we can actually be pretending that we can be somebody that we're not. So let's take a look at this week's lab right here. And the first thing we're going to do, we're going to identify our own MAC address. And I already told you one way we can identify it is that we can run the ifconfig. And come to think of it, we can also, let's see, sometimes my cursor is a little messed up. We can also do ifconfig, and let me just do this. Maybe this will be better. ifconfig, and instead of just running that command, I could do grep ether. And let's see. Oh, ifconfig. ifconfig. And then we'll grep, which means we'll filter just for the word ether. And that is a good way to get our Ethernet address from ifconfig. We can also do IPA, and we can also grep for ether. And that gives us another command, a very similar output, but it also gives us the broadcast of the MAC address, which is of course all Fs. Your lab also provides other commands like ipadder. I was never a fan of that command, ipadder, but that's okay. It still gives us a lot of good information. All we're really looking for is just our Ethernet address, and it's good that we are showing our IP address too. So what we're going to do now is run Wireshark so we can verify in Wireshark output that we can actually see our MAC address and that we are who we say we are. So we're going to run Wireshark from the command line, but we're going to use the ampersand so we can run it in the background, if you will, as opposed to always running everything in the foreground. So what this does is we can still do other commands right here, even though we're running Wireshark. In the background, we can see that this is the process number 12721. Okay, and we're just going to capture our MAC address the easy way. I'm just going to do ping 888. So we start pinging, and let me activate Wireshark and start capturing, and we can stop right now because we already see 8888 as our destination, and we can stop pinging 88. And now 8888 is Google's DNS. Click on this, and let's take a look at the layer 2, and we can see that it is VMware 361F888 or 88, and so we see 000C29361F88. Okay, now what we can do, we can now change our MAC address to something else. Okay, so our lab gives us a couple of different things we can do. We can change the MAC address. Now we can see whether or not MAC changer. Now MAC changer is the program we're going to use. Thankfully, we already have MAC changer on Kali, and you can, on any Linux distribution, all right, you can check to see if any program is installed with the command which. So, for example, which, we can see if SSH has been installed, and we can see that SSH is located in user bin SSH. So which, if we do man and then use which, which tells us how to locate a command. It returns the path names of the files. Okay, so for example, if we don't know if, for example, we have telnet installed, okay, one way is to do man telnet. The other way is to use which and then telnet, and that will tell you where the command lives in its path. So we can do the same thing with MAC changer, which MAC changer, and we can see that it lives in user bin. So the one thing we wanted to check is to see if MAC changer is in fact installed, and it is. So we can run man MAC changer to get the official manual entry, and it says MAC changer is a Linux utility for viewing and manipulating the MAC address for network interfaces. All right, so if we go back to our lab, so this gives us instructions on how to install the MAC changer if we want it. Okay, and please humor me. I'm just going to turn this off because I just use the Google Meet to show the camera, but I don't think you guys care to see me. I know this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to verify and display the current MAC address. So we're going to use -S, and furthermore, we can use IPAdder, for example, to identify what interface our IP address is going to be using. And that, of course, is, I know it's going to be ETH0. But let's use the MAC changer, let's use -S just to see our Ethernet address. That's ETH0. So that's sudo MAC changer S ETH0. And we have current MAC address is 00C29361F. And permanent is this, so they're the same. And we can see that, in fact, That is what identifies us on the network. So let's go ahead and change it to a random MAC address. So the first thing we have to tear down or bring down our current layer 3 connection. Let's do that now. I have config ETH0 down. I have config ETH0 down. And of course, we had to type in sudo. And I should really make sure that we put in sudo first. I'm going to do this in front of you. And then we're going to do MAC changer -r ETH0. So that's -r ETH0. Okay. And new MAC is this. And we can even do it again. There's our new MAC. Let's do it again. So our new MAC is going to change to a random MAC address every time. Following through, we can bring it back up. Let's do that. Up, and we can do -s again. Okay, so our current MAC is CE45-1901, and this is so technically this is our burned in address as it's represented for our VMware here, and our current MAC is the MAC that we changed to. Now let's see how it is when we ping Google, and we are going to recapture. Okay, we're going to stop recapturing, and we're going to stop that, and we're going to double click on this, and our Ethernet address, as you can see now, is CE45-190199F5. Okay. Now, let's go back, and we can just, I'm just going to be a little playful right here, and I'm going to fix the situation just by restarting the VMware right here. And what we're going to do now is change the MAC address to, this is where the masquerade comes in. We're going to change the MAC address to actually be somebody else, somebody that we might know. Okay? And we're going to see our MAC address now that I've reset my machine. We're back to the fact that our current MAC is reflecting our burned in address. Now we're going to see, to see possible vendors, we're going to do MAC changer, and then we can grep for Cisco, but we can first see all the vendors that are available as of this video right here. So for example, if you want to pretend you're somebody from Juniper Networks, you can you can have your OUI be F8. I'm going to write that down. F8 CO and 01. Now, I've always wanted to pretend I am from Juniper Networks. All right? So what we're going to do now is repeat almost the same steps. Okay? So we're going to do Okay, so we're going to do sudo ifconfig eth0 down. Okay, and we're going to do Mac changer. Okay, and this time we are going to use the M choice, and we're let's see, let's just pretend. Now, as you can see, I was already doing this prior to our discussion here. So I'm going to change this to F8 and then CO and then O1. Okay, and I'm gonna make all these 8s. So it's easy to see in Wireshark output. So as you can see here, we're doing Mac changer -M, and we're doing this MAC address right here, which is for what do we say? That other network. Okay. All right, let's press enter. Oh, my apologies. We have to do sudo. Always remember to do sudo. Okay, so now it thinks we are part of Juniper Networks. Okay, now let's do ifconfig eth0 up. And again, I keep on neglecting to put in sudo. Okay, and let's just make sure that we did this operation like we should have. So Mac changer -S eth0 is we have our current Mac is now it's as if we're a part of Juniper. Okay, so let's do Wireshark ampersand to bring up Wireshark, and let's do ping 8888, and let's do some Wireshark in here. Let's stop, and let's stop this. Click on this, and go to Ethernet 2, and as you can see, it actually thinks we are in the Juniper network. And just so you know, if you are not resolving your IP addresses, okay, you can go to edit. If you're not resolving MAC addresses, I should say, my apologies, you can go to edit, preferences, and then go to name resolution, and make sure resolve MAC addresses are checked on your end. You can also resolve IP addresses if you'd like. Obviously, I don't have it checked right now. But anyways, so we just fooled the network into thinking that we are Juniper Networks. So let's clean this up. And if we just have to remember to reboot, just always want to reboot to get things back to 0, because we don't want to forget that, hey, we don't work for Juniper Networks. So anyways, I'm just giving you pause to note that, hey, there is a lot of information that is at our fingertips, but we have to be aware that the person or device that you see in front of you may not be that device in the first place.